Alright, what we have here is all the boffer weapons that we use for the LARP that we attend at the moment. We have 3 different styles. This is the normal round core boffer weapon. It is a tennis grip with either pool noodle or the foam that you put around ducks and tape over the top of it. It's really simple to make, really easy to make. This one is a little more complicated to make. It's called a flat blade, but again, it is foam made out of the same thing. That is. This one is a little bit more complicated to understand. This is a latex. I'm not exactly sure what they used as a core for this one. However, what they do is they make a mold and then they pour the latex into it and then paint it whatever color you want. These are more expensive. The others are cheaper to make, and I'm going to show you how to make one of those real quick.
Which one are we making here?
We're going to make one of the round ones, also known as a tampon of doom, or the round stick.
Okay, so this one is a tampon of doom, right?
Yeah.
What's the difference between the black one and the silver one there?
What's the difference between the black one and the silver one? The black one hasn't been painted yet. The silver one's been painted to show that it is different styles of metal. And also, the black one is a two-hander, which means that you need 2 hands to actually operate that. You can block with 1 hand, but if you attack anybody with it, you need 2 hands. Whereas the shorter one, the silver one, only needs 1 hand. A lot of people like to use the long swords and shields. Unfortunately, I don't have a shield to show you today. However, basically this is what we start with. It's already got a little bit of construction done to it, but don't worry, I'm going to explain all that.
Is this a ultralight? What they call an ultralight?
This is pretty much what we're going to be making. It's going to be an ultralight. The reason why it's an ultralight is because it weighs a lot less than most normal weapons. It is a golf club shaft, which is made out of graphite or titanium. This one is graphite because it does flex. Okay? Basically, what we've done here is I've taken 2 pieces of foam and I've taped them together and I've shaped them via heat so they would melt a little bit and take their shape. What we do is just slide that on. The handle is 110 gauge cord that I've wrapped around the handle from the bottom all the way down and then made a second layer and went back up. I hold it down with increments of electrical tape so it'll actually stay, because I actually had to use several different pieces of cord. But all we have to do is wrap it tightly around the hilt so it stays, and then when we get to finish, I come back over the top and I make kind of an edge.
Okay, and what is a core of a non?
The core of a non-ultralight is usually PVC pipe, and if you've ever picked up a piece of PVC pipe, it's usually either a 1/2 inch or a 1 inch piece of PVC pipe. And if you've ever swung a piece of PVC pipe without foam on it, you know that they're heavy, and as such, they aren't the nicest. What I'm doing now is I'm taking electrical tape, and I'm going to tape down the cord. Unfortunately, I ran out of black, so now we're going to use green. But
it makes it more aesthetically pleasing, huh?
PVC pipe is actually really, really heavy, and when you get hit with them, you feel the impact more. So I guess it's better to fight somebody that's actually wearing armor with a PVC pipe core boffer weapon. However, when they get wet or when it's cold outside, they have a tendency to stiff up. And they also have a tendency to hurt a lot more, especially with those people that don't know how to pull their swings. What I'm doing here now is I am taping down the cross guard so it holds. The normal way to do this is a normal X pattern. You glue it down, usually using Super 77, E6000, or Gorilla Glue. If you use Gorilla Glue, let it dry a little bit. Let it expand some, because Gorilla Glue expands really, really bad. And then that way, when it completely expands, you can take a knife and cut it off. The bottom side notice how there's still a core right here. Bottom side actually needs to have another piece of foam. What I've used for these is little Nerf balls. What I used for that is another piece of foam, like I'm about to use on this one. You can pretty much wrap your grip with anything that you want to. And it's real simple. You can make an entire boffer weapon using one pool noodle and a pocket knife. Right after you get done with the core, you make sure that you cut it to where there's at least enough grip so that you can no longer feel the core. And then you tape that down with electrical tape, preferably the same electrical tape that you use for this. That's usually the last thing I do. I just wanted to go ahead and explain that to you to get that out of the way.
That's safety, huh?
It's safety because a lot of times when you're on a backswing, you have a tendency to accidentally catch yourself or catch an opponent. And I've actually seen people get stabbed with the cores, which really isn't safe. But that's why we try to make them as safe as possible.
That sounds painful. Now, why wouldn't you use Elmer's glue to hold it down?
Because it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick and it comes apart. The second the weapon gets wet, it comes apart. Alright, now as far as the blade is concerned, what you want to do is you're going to take your core and slide it into the foam. Okay, make sure that when you tighten it down, notice how I've got a slit through this one because it was a little too big for the core, because this was actually meant for a piece of PVC pipe. You find the bottom, you cut it out, you make sure everything is going to be really, really nice looking, because again, it's aesthetically pleasing to have a weapon that actually looks semi good, because a lot of the things that we like to try to do with in a game is aesthetics. So even though you're swinging a piece of foam, you still want it to look good. Alright, now if you notice, what I've done here is I've cut a V shape so it'll slide down and it still looks good on the hilt. Then I'll take a piece of electrical tape. I'm going to attach it here. It's going to move around a little bit, and that's fine. This is just the preliminaries. I promise you, more is to come.
Okay.
Alright. Now if you notice, as I open it up, the core is at least 2 inches past the foam. And there's a reason for that. If you use a thrusting tip, or if you decide to thrust with the sword, it would hurt. Because as you thrust, the core does move up and down. And you don't ever want it to get past the end of the foam. Now, one more piece of electrical tape, and this part will be done. Alright. Make sure it's closed, make sure it looks nice. Alright, now what I've done here is I've put duct tape down the handle, or down the core itself. And the reason why I've stuck duct tape down the core is because it holds the boffer weapon, the outside of the boffer weapon together. It actually holds it onto the core. Because as duct tape ages, it becomes more adhesive. It is really sticky now, but it becomes more so. And it is the only thing that I've found that doesn't actually need to be worried about getting wet, because it doesn't lose its stick when it gets wet. Now, you can use whatever you want to for your core.
So duct tape is a safe alternative for the glue you were mentioning.
Yeah, well, it's not only a safe alternative for the glue I mentioned, but the glue can actually get hard on the inside and wear out the inside of the boffer weapon, making it die quicker. So,
and a dead boffer means what?
A dead boffer pretty much means that the core is sticking through. Like for instance, that would be a dead boffer.
Oh,
And if you
okay.
get hit with that, it hurts a lot. Trust me, I know. I think every LARPer has had at least one experience with that boffer. Either getting hit with it or their own boffer weapon breaking.
Tell you all about those ones who play rock, paper, scissors, huh?
Yeah, well, they decided to opt out of the combat and actually decided to make it safer. Now, what I'm going to use for the outside of this particular boffer weapon is going to be duct tape. Duct tape is one of the several alternatives for tape that you could actually use. You can use gaff tape, which is like duct tape, except it is kind of a cloth and it's painted over. It's also dyed. You can also use nylon tape, which is what
That's nylon.
this one is made out of. This is nylon. Nylon runs out in sheets. You use it for repairs and stuff on boats because it is completely, totally waterproof. Unfortunately, I don't have any of this. It is more expensive, way more expensive. So if you're working with a budget, you kind of don't want to use this one. Gaff tape looks a little like this one or this one. These are both gaff tape weapons. Gaff tape weapons they come in many, many different colors, so you don't actually have to paint them. However, we opted to paint ours. These are a cheaper alternative, but they're not extremely cheap. They work well, they are waterproof, they do stick together rather well. But for this instance, since I'm actually working on an extremely cut budget, I'm going to use duct tape. Duct tape is a really good tape to use. It's cheap, it's easy to make repairs on your boffer weapon in case it does break. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a strip of duct tape about the same length as the sword, and I'm going to lay it 2 inches over and all the way down the blade. Then we'll pick it up, and we'll fold it over, and I'm going to run it.
So it doesn't look like you use an awful lot of tape to do that.
Nope, that's what makes it light.
So you can make a lighter weapon with duct tape.
Yes, you can make a lighter weapon with duct tape. You can also make a lighter weapon with gaff tape, except until you get into the extremes, like the sword behind me that looks kind of like a Arabic sword. Because this one I had to use a whole lot more gaff tape on because all the intricate little pieces, and that did add weight.
And that just makes it more pleasing to the eye.
It makes it look better, however, it also makes it heavier. So if you're looking for an ultralight, try not to get too fancy with it. Or you can get fancy. Huh?
Yes.
Start off with what?
Go.
Stop, Alan. Alright, pretty much finishing it off, you just want to overlay the tape about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. Make sure, just try to get as seamless as possible. Straighten out any wrinkles that you got in the tape. Honestly, truly, if you just begun a LARP and you're not sure if you would actually like it or not, your best bet would make a weapon kind of like this. Now, you don't necessarily have to use the ultralight core. It does make a world of difference as far as swinging, because something this size with a piece with a PVC core in it would actually be extremely heavy. It will wear you out really quickly. This is a lighter alternative. However, you might not actually want to use a boffer weapon to fight, but it is really good to know how to make one. Now to slap this on, just slap that on. Take some electrical tape. You just go over the top, holding it in place. Now, it depends. If you want to make your weapons look better, you can get somebody else to make them, because I'm sure there's somebody out at the event that makes weapons like myself. It's a cheap alternative to, instead of doing it yourself. Sometimes it's cheap, sometimes it's not. So that is pretty much how we finish the boffer weapon. Now, notice this one doesn't look the greatest. However, I'm also not going to take a lot of time to make a boffer weapon, because I've actually got something else planned for this course. I'm just going to rip this apart. That is how you make a boffer weapon. Now, if you don't want to actually use a stick, notice I've got other stuff sitting here on the table. Like for instance, this is birdseed. If you are a spellcaster, they usually decide that you throw packets at people.
What's a packet look like?
What does a packet look like? That's a good question. This is a packet. It is a piece of cloth that is filled with birdseed and then folded into a pouch and then rubber banded closed. And they are soft, at least until they get wet.
Why do you use birdseed?
Because it's safe for the environment. We tried using rice, but rice makes birds explode, which isn't very nice for the environment at all. So
Nobody likes exploding birds.
This way, if we lose a spell packet in the woods, you can actually not worry about going to find it.
Do all LARPs just use white?
No. Some LARPs use other colors. The LARP that I go to uses white. Alright, what you want to do is you want to cut your packet into a square, roughly 6 by 6. And then you want to take the proper amount of birdseed, which would be roughly the size of your entire hand. Fill it, put it in the center. And the easiest way to do it is pick it up, corner to corner, corner to corner, hold it tight in your hand, twist it, hold it just like that, bring your rubber band, and just start going around in circles. Notice the tail on this one is longer than the last one I showed you. That's because these spell packets like this with the long tail are good for throwing at a great distance. They have better flying. These with the shorter tail fly faster, so at close range you could probably hit your target with 2 or 3 spells instead of just 1. If they get smaller than these two, chances are they're not going to fly very far. But you can also use those for touch casting.
And why is that a better? Is there a different alternative for these materials, or is that the set and old world for?
These are what I like to use for spell packets. I use pretty much white sheets, old white T-shirts, old white towels, anything that's not too raggedy, too cut up, or anything like that. However, one of the best alternatives that I found for these kind of materials is actually plastic baggies. There are some LARPs out there that use plastic baggies. However, you only get about 4 or 5 good uses out of them, but it is a cheaper alternative.
What about Nerf balls?
You could use Nerf balls. It's just they're round, and when you throw them at somebody, they hit the ground. They have a tendency to roll away, and then you're looking for them. These, you throw them at somebody, they hit, they land, and they're still there. So when you can go find these, and therefore spend less money. So
it's every LARPer's dream to spend less money.
Yep.